The chamber fell silent as the holographic display showed another star system going dark. Daeho watched the red sphere expand across the map, consuming worlds that had existed for thousands of years. The Galactic Council members stood frozen, their various forms of terror identical despite their different species. Chairman Voss raised all four of his arms. His voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of Thuman civilization. The translation devices rendered his words into every language simultaneously. The vote is final. All Outer Rim territories will be abandoned. Every species will retreat to the galactic core. The Ravagers cannot be stopped. Daeho looked around the massive circular room. Representatives from 47 different species stood at their platforms. Some had scales, others had fur or crystalline skin. All of them looked defeated. The Velkari ambassador, whose species had survived 3 galactic wars, was openly weeping. The Resic delegation had already packed their belongings. The holographic display updated again. The Ravagers had consumed 17 star systems in just 3 months. Before that, they had destroyed hundreds more. Every military force sent against them had been annihilated. Ships, stations, entire fleets simply vanished into the darkness that followed the Ravager advance. Ambassador Daeho, Voss said, his large eyes focusing on the human platform. Earth has 14 colony worlds in the Outer Rim. You must begin evacuation immediately. We estimate you have 6 weeks before the Ravagers reach your territory. Daeho stepped forward. He was a small figure compared to most of the aliens in the room, but his voice was steady. Chairman Voss, the human delegation requests clarification. Has any species attempted a coordinated defense? Voss's skin changed color, a sign of confusion in his people. Defense is impossible, Ambassador. The Ravagers adapt to every weapon. They overwhelm every defensive position. 47 attempts have been made. 47 species have lost entire fleets. But has anyone tried to actually stop them? Daeho pressed. Or did they just delay and retreat? A Velkari general stood up, his scales bristling with anger. You dare question our courage? My people lost 3 million ships in the Battle of Keldon Reach. We fought for 17 days before we were forced to withdraw. And then you ran, Daeho said quietly. You all ran, the chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in languages that the translators struggled to keep up with. Some called for Daeho to be removed. Others demanded apologies. Voss slammed his arms on his platform, calling for order. Ambassador Daeho, your species has been part of this council for only 2 centuries. You have never faced a threat of this magnitude. The Ravagers are extinction itself. They cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bargained with. They consume everything. The only logical choice is survival through retreat. Daeho pulled out a small communication device. He activated it and a new hologram appeared beside the map of Ravager advancement. It showed Earth's 3rd Fleet commanded by Admiral Hyejin. 200 warships hung in space near the colony world Sanctuary 9. Chairman, I have just received confirmation from Earth's Unified Command. Humanity respectfully declines the evacuation order. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed to stop humming. Voss leaned forward. You cannot be serious. We are completely serious, Daeho said. Human colonies in the Outer Rim have been ordered to fortify their positions. Earth's military fleets are moving to defensive positions. We will not be evacuating. A Resic diplomat stood, her crystalline body reflecting the light in strange patterns. This is madness. You will all die. Your species will be erased from existence, maybe, Daeho acknowledged. But we will not run without fighting. Someone has to stand. Someone has to try. Voss's voice was almost gentle now. Ambassador, I understand the human tendency toward bravery, but this is not bravery. This is suicide. Your species is young. You have not seen what we have seen. The Ravagers have destroyed civilizations that existed before your planet had multicellular life. What makes you think you can succeed where we have failed? Daeho looked at the map again. The red sphere of Ravager territory was massive, covering almost a quarter of the galaxy's outer rim. But he also saw the human colonies, small blue dots scattered across space. Each one represented millions of lives. Each one was worth defending. Because we have to believe it is possible, he said, and because running just delays the inevitable. If the Ravagers are truly unstoppable, then retreating to the core only gives you a few more years. Eventually they will consume everything, unless someone stops them. On the colony world Sanctuary 9, Colonel Jaewon received the orders directly from Earth Command. Do not evacuate. Prepare for defense. He stood on the command deck of the orbital station, looking down at the planet below. 3 million colonists lived there. Farms stretched across the continents. Children went to schools. People had built lives. Around him, his officers waited for his response. Lieutenant Yuna, his tactical officer, pulled up the latest intelligence on the Ravagers. The data was terrifying. Every battle showed the same pattern. The Ravagers would arrive in overwhelming numbers. Their weapons would adapt to any defense. Their ships would repair themselves. And they never ever stopped, sir, Yuna said quietly. This is a death sentence, Jaewon nodded. Probably. But it's our death sentence to accept or refuse. Earth Command is giving us a choice. We can take the evacuation ships and run, or we can stay and fight. What are you going to do, sir? Jaewon thought about his daughter, living on Earth. He thought about the message he had received from her last week. She was proud of him, she said. Proud that her father protected people. He wondered what she would think if he ran now. I am going to fight, he said. Anyone who wants to leave can take the civilian transports. No judgment, no shame. But I am staying. Yuna looked at the rest of the command crew. They looked back at her. Then one by one they all nodded. We stay, Yuna said. All of us. Across human space, the same scene repeated itself. On mining stations and farming colonies, on military bases and civilian outposts, humans received the same message. Stand or run, fight or flee. And across 14 worlds, millions of humans made the same choice. Back on the council station, Daeho watched as alien evacuation fleets began their journey to the galactic core. Massive ships filled with refugees passed by the human vessels, which were moving in the opposite direction, toward the danger. A Velkari captain contacted Jaewon's station as his refugee ship passed Sanctuary 9. The alien appeared on the view screen, his expression confused. Colonel, why are your ships not leaving? The evacuation order has been given. Jaewon smiled. We are not evacuating, Captain. We are digging in, but why? You will all die. Maybe. But someone has to stand. Someone has to try. And we are human. We do not know how to give up. The Velkari captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke softly. I hope you survive, Colonel. I truly do. But I fear we will never speak again. The refugee ship moved on, heading toward safety. Jaewon turned back to his crew. All right, people. We have 6 weeks before they arrive. Let's make sure we are ready to give them a fight they will never forget. On Earth, in the Strategic Command Center, Admiral Hyejin looked at the reports coming in from every human colony. Not a single one had chosen to evacuate. Every station, every outpost, every settlement had voted to stand and fight. She felt a mix of pride and terror. Pride because her species had chosen courage over fear. Terror because she knew what was coming. The Ravagers had destroyed civilizations with millions of years of experience. Humanity had been in space for only 2 centuries, but they had something those other civilizations might not have had. They had hope. They had the stubborn human refusal to accept the impossible. A young officer approached her desk. Admiral, the Council is demanding we reconsider. They say we are being irrational. Hyejin looked at the map of human space on her display. 14 colonies, 7,000 warships, against an enemy that had consumed hundreds of star systems. Tell the Council that humanity thanks them for their concern, she said. But our decision stands. We fight, the officer saluted and left. Hyejin turned to look out the window at Earth below. Somewhere down there, children were playing. People were falling in love. Life was continuing, unaware of the darkness coming toward them. She would protect that life. Or she would die trying. The galaxy watched and waited, convinced they were witnessing the end of humanity. The refugee ships continued their journey toward the galactic core, passing human colonies that should have been empty, but instead buzzed with activity. Construction drones built defensive stations. Warships took up positions around planets. Civilians who could have fled instead helped fortify there. Holmes Commander Bora stood on the observation deck of the military station above the colony. World New Soul. She watched as a massive Velkari refugee carrier passed by, its hull scarred from decades of use. Her communication officer received a hail from the ship. This is Velkari vessel Morningstar, a tired voice said. We are confused by your activity. Has Earth Command not ordered evacuation? Bora activated her response channel. Morningstar, this is Commander Bora. Earth Command has ordered us to prepare defenses, not evacuate. There was a long pause. Commander, I have been fleeing the Ravagers for 4 months now. I have seen them destroy everything. You cannot win. Why do you stay? Bora looked at the planet below. Her parents lived down there in a small farming community. They had refused to leave just like everyone else. Because this is our home, she said simply. And we defend our home. The Velkari captain's face appeared on the screen. He looked ancient and exhausted. I admire your courage, Commander. But courage is not enough against the Ravagers. They do not fear. They do not tire. They only consume. Then we will make them regret consuming humanity, Bora said. The refugee ship continued on its way. Bora turned back to her crew. How are the defense preparations going? Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sung Min, pulled up a display. We have 43 orbital defense platforms online. Another 20 will be ready within a week. The ground-based missile systems are at 70% capacity. And we have mines scattered throughout the approach vectors. Not enough, Bora muttered, but it will have to do. On Earth, in the Strategic Command Center, Admiral Hyejin presented her strategy to the Unified Command Council. The holographic display showed the predicted Ravager approach routes and human defensive positions. The other species failed because they fought the Ravagers using conventional warfare, she explained. They met overwhelming force with less force and were destroyed. We cannot make the same mistake. General Tae Hyun, head of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward. What do you propose, Admiral? We fight dirty, Hyejin said bluntly. We use every trick humanity has ever developed. Ancient tactics mixed with modern technology. We make ourselves unpredictable. The Ravagers have faced countless species, but they have all fought the same way. Advanced technology against advanced technology. We will be different. She pulled up images of old Earth weapons, chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, nuclear warheads, technology that most spacefaring species had abandoned centuries ago. We will use plasma cannons and railguns, energy shields and physical armor, guided missiles and unguided rocks accelerated to relativistic speeds. We will use everything. Dr. Taeyang, the head of Xenotechnology Research, stood up. He was young for such an important position, barely 30 years old, but his mind was brilliant. Admiral, I have been studying the fragments of Ravager technology that the other species managed to recover. I have found something interesting. He displayed molecular scans of Ravager hull material. The other species reported that the Ravagers adapt to weapons. After a few shots, energy weapons become less effective. Kinetic weapons are absorbed. Shields are bypassed. Everyone assumed the Ravagers were learning and adapting in real time. They are not? Hyejin asked. They are remembering, Taeyang said. Their technology contains a database of every weapon, every tactic, every strategy they have ever encountered. When they face something, they search their memory and deploy the appropriate counter. But here is the important part. They can only counter what they have seen before. The implications hung in the air. General Tae Hyun was the first to speak. So if we use something they have never encountered before, they will be vulnerable, Taeyang finished. At least for a while, until they adapt and add it to their memory. But those few moments of vulnerability might be enough. Hyejin felt a spark of hope. Doctor, how confident are you in this analysis? 80%, Taeyang said. Maybe 90. The data is clear. The Ravagers are not invincible. They are just experienced. Very, very experienced. Then we will teach them something new, Hyejin said. The first test came at Outpost Kepler 7, a small mining station on the edge of human space. Captain Saiwu commanded the defense force there. 3 destroyers and a handful of fighters. When the Ravager scout fleet arrived, everyone expected it to be a massacre. Siwu watched the Ravager ships approach. They were organic-looking, dark, and twisted like corrupted metal. The scan showed 15 vessels, each one larger than his destroyers. All ships, this is Captain Saiwu. Remember the plan. Do not use standard attack patterns. Randomize everything. Confuse them. The Ravagers opened fire first. Dark energy beams lanced through space. Saiwu's flagship took a hit on the forward shields. The energy tore through the barrier like it was not even there. Shields are ineffective, sir, his tactical officer reported. Just like the report said. Switch to physical armor plating, Saiwu ordered. And return fire with kinetic rounds, not energy weapons. The human ships opened up with railguns, firing solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. The Ravager ships took the hits, their hulls cracking but quickly repairing. But they were damaged. That was something. Now missiles, Siwu said. Nuclear warheads, but do not detonate them on impact. Proximity detonation only. The missiles streaked out. The Ravagers destroyed most of them with point defense systems, but 3 got through and detonated near the enemy ships. The nuclear explosions washed over the Ravager vessels. When the light faded, 2 of the alien ships were drifting, disabled. Siwu allowed himself a small smile. They were not expecting that. Again, different weapons this time. Chemical explosives mixed with EMP charges. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 5 Ravager ships were destroyed and the rest had retreated. Siwu's force had lost 1 destroyer and taken heavy damage on the other 2, but they had won. It was the first human victory against the Ravagers. Small but real. News of the battle spread through human space like wildfire. If Kepler-7 could win, maybe others could too. But it also spread through the refugee fleets. Aliens who had been fleeing for months heard that the humans had actually defeated Ravagers in combat. Colonel J-Wan received a communication from a Resic science vessel that had stopped near Sanctuary 9. The crystalline being on the screen looked amazed. "Colonel, we have heard reports of a human victory. Is this true?" "It is true," J-Wan confirmed. "Captain Siwu and his crew defeated a Ravager scout force." "Impossible. We have tried everything. How did you succeed?" J-Wan smiled. "We did not fight fair. We used weapons the Ravagers did not expect. We randomized our tactics. We made ourselves unpredictable. The Resic scientist crystalline form pulsed with light, a sign of excitement. This is extraordinary. No species has managed this. May we observe your defensive preparations?" "You are welcome to stay and watch," J-Wan said. "But I warn you, when the Ravagers come in force, it will be dangerous." "We will stay," the scientist said. "This is too important to miss." More alien vessels began to linger near human colonies. Not refugee ships fleeing, but observers. Scientists and military analysts who wanted to understand how humanity was achieving the impossible. Commander Bo-Ra used this to her advantage. She contacted every alien ship near New Sol and asked them to share their data on Ravager tactics. Some refused, but others were willing to help. She compiled reports from dozens of species, learning from their failures. One pattern became clear. The Ravagers always used the same basic strategy. Overwhelming force, straight-line approach, and direct assault. They had never needed to be creative because they had never needed to be. "They fight like machines," Bo-Ra told her crew. "Efficient but predictable. So we will fight like humans. Chaotic and creative." She planned an ambush. When the Ravagers arrived at New Sol, they would find what looked like a standard orbital defense. But hidden among the asteroids in the system were ships using passive sensors only, invisible to scans. When the Ravagers committed to their attack, Bo-Ra would strike from an unexpected angle. Dr. Tae-Yang continued his research, diving deeper into Ravager technology. He made another discovery. The Ravagers were not individual ships working together. They were a network all connected to a central intelligence. "It is like a hive mind," he explained to Admiral Hai-Jin. "Every ship is connected. They share information instantly. That is why they adapt so quickly. When one ship learns something, they all learn it. So if we could disrupt that connection," Hai-Jin began, "they would lose their coordination," Tae-Yang finished. "They would become much less effective. But I do not know how to do that yet. I need more data. I need to study a functioning Ravager ship." "That is impossible," Hai-Jin said. "No one has ever captured one." "Then we will be the first," Tae-Yang said with the confidence of youth. The Ravagers continued their advance. More human outposts reported contact. Some battles were won, others were lost. But humanity learned from every engagement. Every destroyed ship transmitted its data back to Earth Command before it died. The Ravager Armada arrived at the edge of human space like a dark tide. 300,000 ships, each one a twisted amalgamation of technology and something almost alive. The sensors on Earth's early warning stations registered the fleet and went silent, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the enemy. Admiral Hai-Jin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the ECS Defiance, and watched the tactical display. Red markers filled the screen, so many that they blurred together into a solid mass. Her fleet numbered 7,000 ships. The odds were impossible. "All ships, this is Admiral Hai-Jin. Battle protocol is now active. Remember your training. Remember what we learned. And remember why we fight? She closed the channel and turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Yun Seo. Are the data recorders active on all ships? Yes, Admiral. Every ship will transmit battle data in real time. Even if we lose, Earth Command will learn from our mistakes. Hyejin nodded. That was the real strategy. Humanity was not fighting to win this battle. They were fighting to learn enough to win the war. Every ship that died would teach the survivors how to fight better. It was brutal mathematics, trading lives for knowledge, but it was the only way. The Ravagers moved forward in their standard formation. Massive dreadnoughts at the center, smaller attack ships spread out in a sphere pattern. They had used this formation against 100 species, and it had never failed them. Begin Phase 1, Hyejin ordered. Human ships scattered in all directions, breaking away from standard defensive formations. Some dove toward planets, others climbed above the orbital plane. A few accelerated directly at the enemy. There was no pattern, no coordinated defense. To the Ravagers, it must have looked like panic, but it was carefully planned chaos. Captain Saiwu commanded a wing of destroyers that plunged toward the Ravager fleet at maximum speed. His orders were simple and suicidal. Get close and hit them with everything. All power to forward shields, he told his crew. Weapons free. Fire everything we have. The destroyers unleashed a storm of different weapons. Railgun slugs, plasma bolts, missiles carrying chemical explosives, old-fashioned lasers, and even experimental weapons that humanity had just developed. The Ravagers responded with their own firepower, dark energy beams that tore through shields and armor. Saiwu's flagship shuddered as a beam punched through the hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Damage reports flooded in, but his weapons were hitting the enemy too. A Ravager cruiser broke apart as a nuclear missile detonated against its hull. Another took damage from a railgun barrage that it had not adapted to yet. Sir, we have lost engines, his tactical officer reported. We are drifting. Siwu looked at the display. His destroyer was crippled, but it was still moving toward the enemy fleet on momentum alone, and right ahead was a Ravager dreadnought, one of the massive central command ships. Crew, abandon ship, Saiwu ordered.
Get to the escape pods now. Sir, what are you doing?
His first officer asked. Siwu smiled. Something they will not expect. Go, that is an order. The crew evacuated. Saiwu stayed on the bridge alone. He redirected all remaining power to the engines, coaxing one last burst of speed from the dying ship. The destroyer accelerated directly at the Ravager dreadnought. The enemy ship fired at him, but Saiwu's destroyer was already too damaged to care about more hits. It closed the distance. At the last moment, Siwu overloaded the reactor. The explosion was small by space warfare standards, but it happened right against the Ravager dreadnought's hull. The enemy ship's shields had been calibrated for energy weapons and kinetic impacts, not a reactor detonation at point-blank range. The dreadnought cracked open like an egg, spilling debris and atmosphere into space. It was the first Ravager capital ship ever destroyed in combat. Siwu's sacrifice was recorded by every human ship in the area. The data showed exactly how the dreadnought's shields had failed. Within minutes, Earth Command updated the tactical database and transmitted new strategies to every human vessel. The battle raged for 3 weeks. The Ravagers pushed deeper into human space, but every meter they gained cost them. Human ships used tactics that no species had ever tried. Suicide runs, ambush attacks from unexpected angles, weapons that changed with every engagement. Commander Bo-Ra executed her ambush at New Sol perfectly. When the Ravagers committed to attacking the orbital defenses, her hidden ships emerged from the asteroid field and struck at their rear. The Ravagers had to split their forces, weakening their assault. Bo-Ra's forces destroyed 30 enemy ships before retreating, but the cost was terrible. New Sol's orbital defenses were shattered. 3 of Bo-Ra's ships were destroyed. The colony below took damage from falling debris. Thousands died, yet Bo-Ra transmitted all of her tactical data back to Earth. The ambush strategy was added to humanity's growing knowledge of how to fight Ravagers. Dr. Tae Yang worked frantically in his laboratory on Earth, analyzing every piece of data that came in. The pattern was becoming clearer. The Ravagers were strong, but they were not invincible. They had weaknesses. They relied too much on their hive connection, he told Admiral Hyejin during a brief communication. When one ship learns something, they all adapt. But that also means they all share the same weakness. If we could find their central node, the ship that coordinates the hive mind, we could cripple the entire fleet. How do we find this central node? Hyejin asked. I do not know yet, Taeyang admitted, but I am working on it. Lieutenant Yuna, who had survived the defense of Sanctuary 9, volunteered for a desperate mission. She took a small stealth ship deep into Ravager-controlled space, using passive sensors to study the enemy fleet. For 3 days, she drifted among the enemy ships, recording everything. On the 4th day, she saw it. At the center of the Ravager formation was a ship different from the others. It was larger, more organic-looking, and every other Ravager ship oriented toward it, the central node. Yuna transmitted her findings back to Earth Command and tried to escape. The Ravagers detected her ship and opened fire. Her small vessel had no chance, but she had already sent the data. As her ship exploded, Yuna's last thought was that her death had meaning. Dr. Taeyang received Yuna's data and confirmed his theory. The Ravagers had a single point of failure. Destroy the central node and the entire fleet would lose coordination. They would become individual ships instead of a unified force. We can win this, Taeyang told Admiral He-jin, but someone has to reach that central ship and destroy it. He-jin looked at the tactical display. The central node was in the middle of the Ravager fleet. 300,000 ships surrounded it. Reaching it would require going through all of them. How many ships do we have left? She asked Yunseo. 5,000 operational. Another 1,000 damaged but still capable of fighting. The rest are destroyed or too damaged to continue. 5,000 ships against 300,000, and they had to fight their way to the center. The mathematics were simple. It was impossible, but impossible had never stopped humanity before. He-jin called a meeting of all ship captains. Their faces appeared on screens around her bridge, hundreds of commanders looking to her for orders. Some were young, others were veterans. All of them looked exhausted. They had been fighting for 3 weeks straight. I will not lie to you, He-jin said. What I am about to ask is a suicide mission. We have identified the Ravager's weakness. There is a central command ship at the heart of their fleet. If we destroy it, we can win this war, but reaching it requires going through the entire enemy armada. The captains were silent. Hyojin continued. I am asking for volunteers. Anyone who does not want to participate can fall back to Earth's defensive perimeter. There will be no shame in that choice. You have all already done more than anyone thought possible. Captain Junho, commander of a medical transport ship, spoke up. Admiral, my ship has no weapons, but it has engines and it has a reactor. I volunteer. Admiral, the science vessel Dawn's Light volunteers, another captain said. The destroyer Phoenix is in, said a third. One by one, every captain volunteered. All 5,000 ships. Not a single one chose to retreat. He-jin felt pride and grief in equal measure. These people were going to die. But they were going to die fighting, and their sacrifice would save humanity. Then we attack tomorrow, she said. Prepare your ships. Send messages to your families. And get some rest. We are going to need it. That night, across the human fleet, soldiers wrote letters they hoped would reach Earth. Parents recorded messages for children. Friends said goodbye to each other. Everyone knew what tomorrow would bring. Major So-hyun, commander of an elite strike team, prepared for her part of the mission. While the fleet attacked the Ravager armada, her team would use a stealth ship to slip through the chaos and reach the central node. Dr. Taeyang was part of her team. He was the only one who knew exactly where to strike the enemy ship to destroy it. Are you scared? So-hyun asked Taeyang as they prepared their equipment. The young scientist looked at her and nodded. Terrified, but also excited. We are going to do something that no species has ever done. We are going to kill the thing that killed 1,000 civilizations. We are probably going to die doing it. So-hyun said. Probably. Taeyang agreed. But what a way to go. Admiral He-jin spent the night on the bridge of the Defiance, watching reports come in from across human space. The human fleet struck the Ravager armada like a hammer against an anvil. 5,000 ships charged into 300,000 with no regard for safety or survival. This was Operation Phoenix. Burn everything to rise victorious. Commander Dong-hyun led the vanguard, 20 heavy cruisers whose only job was to punch a hole through the enemy formation. His ship, the Eternal Dawn, accelerated to .9 light speed, the engines screaming as they pushed past safety limits. All power to forward shields, Dong-hyun ordered. We only need to survive for 30 seconds. The Ravagers opened fire. Dark energy beams filled space with death. The first human ships exploded, their shields overwhelmed in seconds. But behind them came more ships and more. And more. Dong-hyun's cruiser took hit after hit. The shields failed. The hull began to burn, but he kept accelerating. At near light speed, his ship was less a vessel and more a kinetic weapon. When it hit the Ravager formation, the explosion was like a small sun being born. The blast carved a corridor through the enemy fleet. Donghyun's last transmission was simple. Path is clear. You are welcome. Behind his sacrifice, more human ships poured through the gap. But the Ravagers were adapting, closing the corridor. Captain Junho saw what was needed and made his choice. His medical transport had no weapons, but it had a massive reactor designed to power medical equipment for months. Junho evacuated his medical staff to escape pods and piloted the ship alone toward the closing gap. This is Captain Junho to all ships. I am clearing the path. Use it well. His ship exploded at the narrowest point of the corridor. The detonation pushed back the Ravager vessels, keeping the path open for precious seconds. Dozens of human ships rushed through before the enemy could close it again. Admiral Heejin watched from the bridge of the Defiance as her fleet tore itself apart to create a path. Every ship that died bought a few more meters. Every sacrifice allowed a few more vessels to push deeper into the enemy formation. Status on Major Sohyun's team? She asked Yoon Seo. The stealth ship Ghost of Terran Spirit has entered the corridor. They are proceeding toward the central node. Good. Keep the path open as long as possible. But keeping it open required more sacrifice. Officer Hae-won commanded a science vessel filled with experimental reactors. She saw the Ravagers beginning to collapse the corridor and knew what had to be done. Override safety protocols, she told her AI. Set all reactors to overload. Give me maximum yield. This will destroy the ship, the AI warned. I know. Do it anyway. Hae-won piloted her vessel into the thickest concentration of Ravager ships. When the reactors detonated, 17 enemy destroyers vanished in the blast. The corridor stayed open. On the Ghost of Terran Spirit, Major So-hyun watched the tactical display as human ships died around her. Each sacrifice was marked by a flash of light on the sensors. So many lights, so many lives. Stay focused, she told her team. Their deaths mean nothing if we fail. Dr. Tae-yang sat at the science station, his hands flying over controls as he analyzed the central node. It was close now, just a few thousand kilometers away. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any human vessel. Its surface pulsed with biomechanical activity. I am detecting the hive signal, Tae-yang said. Every Ravager ship is connected to this vessel. This is definitely the central node. Can you destroy it? So-hyun asked. I think so, but we will need to get inside. The hull is too thick to penetrate from outside. And once we are inside, I will need to manually trigger the device I have built. There is no remote detonation option. So-hyun understood what that meant. So we go in and we do not come out. No, Tae-yang said quietly. We do not. The team was silent. 12 people on a stealth ship, deep in the heart of the enemy fleet. All of them had known this was a one-way mission. But knowing it intellectually and facing it emotionally were different things. Lieutenant Min-ji, the team's explosives expert, spoke up. How long will we have after we trigger the device? 30 seconds, Tae-yang said. Maybe a minute if we are lucky. The cascade reaction will spread through the ship's bioneural network and then jump to every connected Ravager vessel. But we will be at the epicenter of the detonation. 30 seconds, Min-ji repeated. She looked at So-hyun. Enough time for a final message home? Enough time, So-hyun confirmed. The Ghost of Terran Spirit approached the central node. The Ravager ship seemed to pulse with awareness. So-hyun expected defensive fire, but none came. The central node was protected by the entire Ravager fleet. Nothing should have been able to get this close, but humanity had paid the price in blood to prove that assumption wrong. I am detecting a docking port, Tae-yang said. It looks biological, but I think we can interface with it. Do it, So-hyun ordered. The stealth ship attached to the Ravager vessel. The connection was unnatural, like grafting metal onto flesh. Warning lights flashed on the control panels, but the seal held. Prepare for entry, So-hyun said. Once we are inside, we move fast. This ship will know we are here. The team gathered their equipment. Tae-yang carried the cascade device, a sophisticated piece of technology designed to disrupt the Ravager's hive connection. It looked like a silver sphere covered in complex circuitry. The airlock opened. Beyond it was a corridor that seemed to breathe. The walls were a mixture of metal and organic tissue, pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. The air smelled wrong, sharp and chemical. Stay together, So-hyun said. Tae Yang, guide us to the optimal detonation point. They moved through the ship. The corridors were empty but somehow aware. So Hyun felt like they were walking through the belly of a living thing, which in a way they were. Tae Yang led them deeper into the vessel following the hive signal. It grew stronger with every step, a psychic pressure that made their heads ache. Some of the team members started to hear whispers in languages they did not understand. Almost there, Tae Yang said. The central nexus should be just ahead. They entered a massive chamber. The walls were covered in neural tissue, pulsing with bioluminescent light. In the center of the room was something that looked like a massive brain, suspended in a web of organic cables. The hive mind made physical, and it was aware of them. A voice spoke not in sound but directly in their minds. It was old beyond measure, carrying the weight of 1,000,000 years of existence. Humans, you should have fled like the others. Why do you resist? So Hyun stepped forward. Because we do not give up. Because someone has to stand. Because you made the mistake of threatening Earth. I have consumed 1,000 civilizations. All of them resisted at first. All of them fell. You are no different. We are completely different, So Hyun said. Those civilizations ran. They delayed. They hoped you would go away. We are fighting, and we are going to destroy you. The voice in their minds carried something that might have been laughter. You cannot destroy me. I am eternal. I have existed since before your species learned to make fire. Then it is time for you to die, Tae Yang said. He activated the cascade device. The silver sphere began to glow. The neural tissue in the chamber started to convulse. The voice in their minds became a scream. What have you done? Given humanity a chance, Tae Yang replied. This device will disrupt your hive network. Every Ravager ship will lose connection. You will die. They will become mindless, and humanity will survive. The chamber began to shake. Alarms that were not quite sound filled the air. The organic walls started to rupture. 30 seconds, Tae Yang announced. The cascade has begun. So Hyun activated her communication device. All team members, record your final messages. We do not have much time. Around her, the team pulled out personal recording devices. Some spoke to parents, others to children or lovers. Lieutenant Minji recorded a message to her younger brother, telling him to be brave and live a good life. So Hyun recorded her own message. Mom, Dad, I hope you are proud. We did something impossible today. We stopped the Ravagers. Humanity survives. Tell everyone that we did not run. Tell them we stood and fought and won. The device's glow intensified. Through the ship's hull, they could hear the cascade spreading. The Ravager vessels outside began to fail, their hive connection severed. Admiral Hee-jin, still fighting in the space outside, saw the enemy ships suddenly go dark. One by one, hundreds of thousands of Ravager vessels stopped functioning. They drifted in space like dead things. What happened? Hyun-seo asked. They did it, Hee-jin whispered. So Hyun's team did it. The Ravagers are defeated, but she knew the price. The central node was going critical. The explosion would consume everything within a light minute, including the ghost of Terran spirit. Inside the dying ship, So-hyun watched her team finish their recordings. The countdown reached 10 seconds. It has been an honor serving with all of you, So-hyun said. Honor is ours. Major, Minji replied. Tae Yang looked at the cascade device, watching the reaction reach its peak. You know, I always wondered what the last thing I would say would be. I thought it would be something profound. But all I can think is, we won. Humanity won. The device detonated. The central node exploded from the inside out. The cascade reaction jumped through the hive network to every Ravager ship simultaneously. 300,000 vessels died in an instant, their biological components fried by the psychic feedback. The explosion consumed the ghost of Terran spirit. The silence after the battle was absolute. 300,000 Ravager ships drifted in space, dark and dead. The human fleet, what remained of it, floated among the wreckage. Of the 5,000 ships that had begun the final assault, only 300 survived. Admiral Hee-jin stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at the tactical display that now showed green markers instead of red. Victory. They had actually won. But the cost made her want to weep. Begin search and rescue operations, she ordered. Find every escape pod, every survivor. Bring them home. Admiral, Yunseo said quietly. We are receiving signals from across human space. The Ravagers everywhere have gone dark. Every single one. The cascade worked globally. Yejin closed her eyes. Dr. Taeyang had been right. Destroying the central node had killed the entire Ravager collective, but it had cost him his life, along with Major Sohyun and her entire team. Mark their sacrifice in the records, Yejin said. Major Sohyun and her team saved humanity. Their names will be remembered forever. The rescue ships found Lieutenant Minji 3 hours later, drifting in an escape pod that had been damaged by the explosion. She was unconscious, badly injured, but alive. The medical teams rushed her to the nearest hospital ship. When Minji woke up 2 days later, the first thing she saw was Admiral Hyejin sitting beside her bed. The others? Minji asked, already knowing the answer. Gone, Hyejin said gently. You are the only survivor from the ghost of Terran spirit. I am sorry, Minji closed her eyes. She remembered Major Sohyun's final words. She remembered Taeyang's smile as he activated the device. She remembered the courage of her team in those final moments. They saved us all, Minji whispered. They did, Hyejin confirmed. And now you carry their story. You are the witness to their sacrifice. Across human space, the survivors began the difficult work of counting the cost. 63 colony worlds had been damaged or destroyed. 4 billion people were dead. 6,700 ships would never return home. The number was overwhelming, but humanity had survived, and the galaxy was safe. 6 months after the final battle, the Galactic Council reconvened. This time, they met not in the protected core worlds but back at Harmony 7, in the space that humanity had defended. The station had been repaired, though scars from the battle still marked its hull. Ambassador Daeho stood at the human platform, looking older than before. The war had aged everyone who lived through it. Around him, representatives from 47 species gathered. Many had returned from the core worlds, cautiously reclaiming their abandoned territories. The Ravagers were gone, truly gone, and the outer rim was safe again. Chairman Voss stood at the center of the chamber. His forearms were spread wide in a gesture of respect. Ambassador Daeho, the Council wishes to formally thank humanity for their service to the galaxy. Your species stood when all others fled. You fought when victory seemed impossible, and you won. We did what was necessary, Daeho said. Nothing more. But you did it at terrible cost, Voss replied. 4 billion human lives. 63 worlds. The Council cannot repay such a debt, but we wish to try. What does humanity need? Daeho looked around the chamber. What we need is for this to never happen again. We need a real defense, not evacuation plans, not retreat protocols. An actual military force capable of protecting the galaxy. A Velkari general stood up. You are proposing a united military? Under whose command? Under joint command, Daeho said. Representatives from all species. But with humanity providing tactical leadership, we learned how to fight the Ravagers. We can teach you. There was murmuring among the delegates. The idea of a united galactic military was revolutionary. Species had always maintained separate forces. The humans proved themselves, a Resic diplomat said. I support this proposal. As do we, said a Thumon representative. One by one, the species voted. The motion passed unanimously. The Galactic Defense Force would be established, with Admiral Hyejin as its first supreme commander. Hyejin herself stood before the council, accepting the position with mixed feelings. I accept this responsibility, she said, but I do so with the memory of those we lost. 4 billion humans died to save the galaxy. We will honor them by ensuring no species ever faces extinction alone again. On Earth, construction began on the Memorial of Stars. In high orbit, builders created a massive structure containing 4 billion points of light, one for each human who died in the war. The memorial could be seen from the surface at night, a new constellation in the sky. At the center of the memorial, a single inscription was carved in every known language. They stood when others ran. Lieutenant Minji, now promoted to captain, attended the dedication ceremony. She was still recovering from her injuries, walking with a cane, but she insisted on being present. When asked to speak, she walked slowly to the podium. I'm the only survivor of the mission that ended the war, she said. I carry with me the final recordings of Major So-hyun, Dr. Taeyang, and the rest of my team. They knew they were going to die. They recorded messages for their families, and they did it without hesitation, without regret. She pulled out a data chip. Major So-hyun's last words were simple. We did not run. That is what she wanted everyone to know. Humanity did not run. We stood, we fought, and we won. The crowd was silent. Minji continued. I think about them every day. I wonder why I survived when they did not. I wonder if I deserve to be here. But then I remember what Dr. Taeyang said in his final moments. He said we won. Not I won. Not I succeeded. We won. Because that is what humanity does. We fight together. We sacrifice together. We win together. After the ceremony, Minji visited the memorial alone. She released Major So-hyun's ashes into space, watching them drift among the 4 billion stars. Each particle caught the light, sparkling like hope in the darkness. Thank you, Minji whispered, for showing me what courage really means. Ambassador Daeho met with Chairman Voss privately after the council session. The old Thumon looked at the human with new respect. I must confess something, Voss said. When you first refused to evacuate, I thought you were fools. I thought humanity would be extinct within weeks. I was wrong. You were logical, Daeho said. By every calculation, we should have lost. The odds were impossible. Then how did you win? Daeho smiled. Because we did not fight to win. We fought to learn. Every ship that died taught us something new. Every battle made us stronger. We turned our deaths into education and our losses into lessons. The Ravagers had never faced an enemy who learned that fast, who adapted that quickly, and who sacrificed that willingly, Voss added. Yes, Daeho agreed. Sacrifice was necessary. But it was not meaningless. Every person who died believed their death would save others. And they were right. Voss was quiet for a moment. My species has existed for 10,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have survived wars and plagues and disasters. But in all that time, we never learned what humanity taught us in 6 months. What is that? That courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act despite fear. That hope is not blind optimism. It is the choice to believe victory is possible even when logic says otherwise. That sacrifice has meaning when it is made for something greater than yourself. Daeho nodded. Those are human values. But they do not have to be only human values. Any species can choose courage over fear. Any species can choose to stand instead of run. Then that will be our goal, Voss said. To spread those values throughout the galaxy. To ensure that when the next threat comes, we face it together. Standing. Fighting. Winning. The two leaders shook hands, or the equivalent for their different anatomies. A new age was beginning. An age shaped by humanity's example. Admiral Hyojin stood in the Strategic Command Center on Earth, looking at the new tactical displays. The Galactic Defense Force was taking shape. Ships from dozens of species were being integrated into combined fleets. Training programs were being developed. Defensive stations were being built. It is going to work, Yunseo said beside her. The United Defense Force. It is actually going to work. It has to work, Hyojin said. We paid too high a price for it to fail. She thought about all the people she had sent to their deaths. Captain Siwoo ramming the dreadnought, Commander Donghyun opening the path, Captain Junho keeping it clear, Officer Haewon buying precious seconds, Major So-hyun and her team destroying the central node. Do you think they would be proud? Yunseo asked. The ones who died? Do you think they would be happy with what we built? Hyojin looked at the memorial visible through the window, 4 billion stars shining in the darkness. I think they knew what they were dying for. Not just to defeat the Ravagers, but to prove that standing and fighting was possible. That courage could overcome any obstacle. That hope could defeat any darkness. They gave us a future, Yunseo said. They gave the galaxy a future, Hyojin corrected. And now it is our responsibility to honor that gift. To build something worthy of their sacrifice. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Species that had fled in terror returned to their homes. Colonies that had been abandoned were rebuilt. The Ravager ships, all 300,000 of them, were carefully dismantled and studied. Their technology was catalogued, their tactics analyzed, their weaknesses documented.